In just a few weeks, more than 150,000 Russian troops have surged toward Pokrovsk, turning a mid-sized city into the most violent hotspot in Donetsk, where Ukraine says Moscow lost 13,000 soldiers in a single September counterattack. The scale of destruction is staggering, with Russian armor taking heavy losses and daily casualties rising into the thousands as both sides push the limits of modern warfare. This is no ordinary urban clash. It is Moscow's largest effort to break Ukraine's eastern defensive wall. If Pokrovsk falls, the key supply routes linking Donetsk and Dnipro could be exposed, opening the door for deeper strikes against millions living behind the front. Reports show Russian units pressing from 3 directions, leaving Ukraine with a narrow corridor to keep the city alive, while commanders focus on saving troops rather than fighting over ruins. The true battle, however, goes beyond control of a single city. It centers on who can dominate drones, artillery, and logistics, the 3 elements now shaping every major breakthrough on the battlefield. Ukraine is striking Russian oil terminals and radar sites with new Flamingo missiles, while FPV drones continue to force surrenders and break formations before they reach the front. Yet one question still hangs over the map. Why has Russia poured massive numbers of troops into Pokrovsk but failed to close the encirclement, even as mud, fatigue, and stretched reserves slow every advance? And what tactics is Ukraine using to stall the most aggressive Russian push of the year? The next chapters of this fight may reveal answers that the headlines have missed. This area is a critical hub for Moscow's logistics, concentrated with valuable ammunition depots and strategic radar sites. Moscow has sent about 150,000 soldiers to this spot out of the 700,000 active across Ukraine, and the buildup shows a serious plan to overpower the area. The troops include armored teams with tanks like the upgraded T-90M models and long-range guns that fire from safe spots behind the lines. 4 Marine brigades join the mix with scout drones, spotting targets, and FPV attack units diving at Ukrainian positions to disrupt defenses. This massive setup aims to surround the town from north, south, and east directions, and the goal focuses on grabbing tall structures and factory zones to dominate with heavy gunfire from above. Soldiers push forward in small squads through residential blocks, and they use the railway and river as natural barriers to split Ukrainian lines. This vast distance should have placed the Mi-8 and the critical assets it was defending securely in a zone where only strategic bombers or expensive cruise missiles could typically pose. The crew likely anticipated intercepting slow, short-range FPV drones around the patrolling area. Recent updates from mid-November reveal Russian squads slipping deep into northwest streets, yet they face stiff pushback in every block. Ukrainian airborne groups hold key multi-level spots, and they stop enemy teams from settling in to launch wider assaults. This increased operational tempo meant the Mi-8s were flying longer hours and deeper routes. Ironically, thick fog in recent days traps advancing columns, and it leads to ambushes where Ukrainian spotters guide strikes on stuck vehicles. Drone swarms from Ukraine buzz constantly overhead, and they target supply trucks far back to weaken the front push. This crucial detail underscores the magnitude of the shift, highlighting that the aircraft was not struck while stationary on the ground, but was eliminated during active. Artillery exchanges boom without stop, and Ukrainian precision shells hit command posts to confuse Russian moves. The lack of a full breakthrough stems from these ongoing hurdles, and Moscow shifts tactics to bomb logistics paths instead of direct charges. Ukrainian forces adapt by using ground robots for resupply, and they keep a slim 15-kilometer escape route alive despite heavy fire. Counterattacks in northern edges slow Russian gains, and they force redeployments that thin out the main assault. Leaders like Zelensky leave decisions to field officers who prioritize saving troops over holding rubble, and this approach buys time for new defense lines beyond the city. The helicopter crew believed at first that they were dealing with a small reconnaissance drone, yet this assumption collapsed when the FP-1 took a direct glide bombs rain down on positions, and they create craters that halt armored advances. Yet defenders rebuild barriers quickly with whatever materials lie around. Scout teams on both sides trade fire in foggy mornings, and the weather turns simple patrols into deadly surprises. This drawn-out struggle highlights how urban terrain levels the field against bigger numbers, and Ukrainian resilience keeps the fight balanced. Armored vehicles bog down in mud from autumn rains, and they become easy marks for anti-tank squads hiding in ruins. Drone operators coordinate with ground troops to pinpoint weak spots, and the combined effort disrupts planned encirclements. The battle rages without a decisive edge, and it drains resources as small victories pile up on either side. The danger increased because the FP1 carried a recognition system designed to read thermal patterns, and this allowed it to interpret the. Ukraine employs an attrition approach to hinder Russian advance rates near Pokrovsk, and this method focuses on wearing down enemy units through targeted strikes. Commander Syrskyi highlights the aim of inflicting heavy casualties, so Moscow's push loses momentum, and the constant pressure drains their frontline brigades. Soldiers from Kyiv prioritize destroying key assets like drone pads, where unmanned flyers launch from hidden spots, and command hubs that coordinate assaults. These hits disrupt planning and leave attacking groups without clear orders during critical moments. Supply depots face repeated blows too, and the damage cuts off fuel along with ammo needed for sustained operations. Trucking stations crumble under fire, and this forces Russian convoys to reroute through risky paths exposed to further ambushes. Artillery with guidance systems pounds distant positions, and the barrages reach up to 40 kilometers behind enemy lines to shatter gathering points. HIMARS rockets streak in with precision, and they obliterate clusters of vehicles before those can join the fight. Storm Shadow missiles soar over terrain to strike fortified bunkers, and the explosions scatter debris that blocks roads for hours. Long-range UAVs glide silently at night, and they drop payloads on radar setups guiding Russian air support. These tools allow defenders to reach deep without risking close contact, and the result keeps aggressors off balance. Moscow manages to move troops forward, yet the cost mounts in delayed reinforcements and exhausted squads pulling back for rest. Brigades rotate frequently due to burnout, and this cycle slows their overall drive as fresh units take time to adapt. Defenders spot incoming waves early through scout networks, and they respond with layered traps that pin down infantry. Russian patrols creep through fields, but sudden shelling scatters them before consolidation. Drone teams from Ukraine hover above battle zones, and they adjust fire in real time to maximize hits on moving targets. Infantry holds firm in dugouts while directing these unmanned aids, and the combination frustrates larger enemy efforts. Moscow's attempts to surge meet fierce resistance, and the prolonged exchanges sap morale among forward elements. Units that once charged boldly now hesitate, and this hesitation buys time for Ukrainian rotations. Each attempt by the Mi-8 to break the path created only a brief pause before the FP1 corrected its course and closed the distance again. Guided munitions zero in on tent camps, and they force dispersal that complicates command chains. UAV operators launch from mobile vans, but defenders track those and send interceptors to neutralize threats mid-air. Artillery crews reposition after each volley to avoid counter-battery fire, and this mobility keeps the pressure steady. Russian leaders order more waves despite fatigue, and the repeated pushes lead to fragmented attacks lacking coordination. Defenders exploit these gaps with flanking maneuvers, and they reclaim small pockets lost earlier in the day. Ukrainian teams coordinate across sectors to maintain the barrage, and the unified effort ensures no respite for the other side. The strategy demands patience, but delivers results in stalled offensives and mounting frustrations for Moscow's planners. If Russian troops seize Pokrovsk, the strategic setup in eastern Ukraine would change a lot, and Moscow could gain a strong edge over wider areas. The town sits right on the main path leading to Dnipropetrovsk province, with its busy rail lines carrying supplies and power plants, fueling operations far behind the lines. Capturing this hub would let invading forces set up forward bases quickly, and they could push armored columns through open fields toward bigger targets without facing the same urban traps. Defenders pulled back in disorder, and the retreat exposed flanks that had previously stayed safe under city cover. Russian commanders redirected artillery batteries to pound distant positions, and the added range struck convoys rushing aid to isolated Ukrainian units. Ukrainian lines cracked under the strain, and scattered squads struggled to regroup under constant harassment from overhead scouts. Moscow rolled out extra drone crews for FPV missions, and these flyers swarmed enemy rear zones up to 120 kilometers away to locate and strike weak points. Fresh Russian teams launched from secured positions inside the captured town and targeted fuel depots that kept Ukrainian trucks moving, along with radar posts guiding air defenses. Ukrainian spotters lost their high ground advantage, and their unmanned units faced jamming from closer enemy electronic warfare teams. Russian assault groups fanned out to harass supply routes, and the disruptions slowed reinforcements headed to threatened sectors. Power grids in nearby districts came under direct threat, and blackouts forced factories to halt production of key equipment like shells and vehicle components. The takeover unlocked paths toward Kramatorsk and Sloviansk, and the advance redrew the Donetsk frontline map in Moscow's favor. Russian infantry advanced through valleys linking these cities, and they used captured roads to speed up tank deployments for coordinated attacks. Defenders in these areas faced flanking assaults from multiple directions, and the pressure triggered hurried evacuations from several key positions. Artillery duels intensified as invading guns moved closer, and the expanded barrages covered wider areas to suppress counter-battery fire. Ukrainian forces launched guerrilla raids on the new occupiers, but holding ground became much harder without the Pokrovsk buffer. The shift boosted Russian morale for bolder operations, and their commanders ordered probes into adjacent regions to test Ukraine's weakened resistance. Western observers labeled Pokrovsk as the gateway to all of eastern Ukraine, and losing it would hand Moscow control over logistics that sustained the region's fight. Russian engineers repaired damaged tracks quickly, and trains loaded with heavy weapons rolled straight into forward zones. Ukrainian air defenses stretched thin against increased drone attacks, and the added pressure diverted resources from other hotspots. Commanders in Kyiv faced hard decisions on reallocating brigades, and the redistribution left gaps elsewhere that Russian forces exploited. Russian patrols extended deeper without fear of rapid encirclement, and their expanded reach challenged Ukrainian mobility across the front. This shift in control showed how one town's fall tied into larger territorial changes, and Moscow's gains accelerated as Ukrainian defenses buckled. The situation created a harsh outlook for holding the east, and strategic planners had to move quickly to blunt Russia's advantage. Russia has switched tactics to target Ukrainian supply lines in Mirnorod since failing to grab the city center, and this move aims to weaken defenders without full-on clashes. Moscow's commanders redirect fire toward key transport hubs, and the strikes hit rail tracks that once moved ammo freely through the area. Point transfer spots explode under bomb runs, and the blasts scatter crates meant for frontline squads. Motorized convoy paths turn into kill zones, and Russian spotters guide drones to ambush trucks hauling fuel along dirt roads. These attacks create bottlenecks that delay fresh gear reaching isolated posts, and the disruptions force Ukrainian leaders to reroute essentials through riskier backways. The second drone struck a fuel truck that held close to 20,000 liters of diesel, and the hit created a column of black smoke that climbed into the fighting swings back and forth daily without a game-changing push, and Moscow's units probe edges to find soft spots in the network. Artillery shells rain on junction points, and the impacts crater pavement that slows heavy vehicles to a crawl. The burning pool under the tank created a hazard that nobody could approach, and the base had to divide its personnel between fighting the flames and searching for the rest. Ukrainian guards set up checkpoints around these sites, but incoming raids forced quick evacuations to avoid total loss. The back-and-forth exchanges drain both sides as repair crews work under fire to patch holes in the system. Moscow's plan chokes off brigade resupplies, and the tactic avoids bloody street fights by starving out positions from afar. Infantry holds firm in outer defenses, yet dwindling stocks push them toward rationing bullets during patrols. Moscow strives to suffocate Ukrainian brigades through these back-end hits rather than charging headlong into built-up zones, and the shift buys time for regrouping after earlier stalls. Guided munitions streak toward bridge crossings, and the explosions topple structures that once linked supply chains across rivers. Russian sabotage teams sneak close to cut power lines feeding depots, and the blackouts halt loading operations at night. Defenders counter by deploying mobile anti-drone nets, but persistent waves overwhelm some setups. The ongoing sabotage turns routine deliveries into hazardous runs, and truck drivers weave through fields to dodge known strike areas. Ukrainian commanders adapt formations to shield convoys with escort vehicles, but losses mount from hidden mines planted along alternate trails. Those explosions cut power lines, damaged storage shelters, and forced the crews to retreat to safer positions. This combined impact revealed a shift in Ukrainian tactics because the drones worked together in multiple layers and pressured the base. The pattern raises an important question. Do you think drones can change the balance of the Ukraine-Russia war in the coming year? A Ukrainian FP1 taking down a Russian Mi-8 deep inside Rostov was not just another headline. It was the moment the battlefield quietly changed shape. A drone built to hit fuel tanks suddenly proved it could hunt a helicopter in the dark, and that single strike opened the door to a chain of attacks that smashed. The Mi-8 was only the beginning. Across Crimea, Bryansk, and Rostov, the FP-1 and FP-2 have forced Russia to. These drones now move like a low-cost air force that never tires, never hesitates, and never complains about danger. If a cheap long-range drone can break through layered defenses and hit strategic assets, then no helicopter group, missiles. How far from the front is far enough when a drone can fly quietly through the night and strike before anyone reacts? The real suspense now lies in who adapts faster. Will Russia close the gaps? Will Ukraine push even deeper? Or, if you want to follow how this new drone war unfolds, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to Military Force. Many Russian soldiers give up in large numbers because Ukrainian drones equipped with loudspeakers broadcast clear surrender steps. Unmanned flyers hover low over trenches, and they play messages urging troops to drop weapons, then walk toward friendly lines with hands raised. Isolated squads hear the calls amid silence, and they emerge from bunkers to follow instructions under watchful cameras. Captured footage shows groups of 10 or more laying down rifles, and the process leads to quick prisoner transfers without prolonged firefights. Ukrainian operators adapt tactics by combining audio prompts with warning strikes, and the mix convinces holdouts to comply before full attacks land. These psychological tools turn desperate pockets into orderly capitulations, and the results free up assault brigades for wider pushes. Dozens wave white flags in recent days, and the trend spreads fear among remaining units facing similar encirclements. Autumn mud seasons bog down Russian mechanized vehicles as they try to block the counterpush, and this weather turns mobility into a nightmare for heavy gear. Tanks sink into soft ground during rushed redeployments, and the stuck hulls become sitting ducks for overhead strikes. Convoys grind to halts on soaked trails, and crews abandon equipment to avoid incoming fire from waiting ambushes. Ukrainian scouts monitor these choke points, and they call in artillery to pound immobile clusters before those can dig out. The quagmire delays reinforcements by hours or days, and it exposes supply lines to partisan raids that further slow responses. Fog rolls in with the rains, and it masks Ukrainian advances while blinding enemy patrols attempting counters. Brigades meant for rapid intervention lose momentum in the sludge, and the setbacks allow defenders to consolidate gains without facing overwhelming numbers. At the same time, Ukraine deploys Megara sea drones to hit the Tuapse oil terminal, and airborne UAVs target the Levskaya station in Rostov region. Surface vessels skim across Black Sea waves, and they travel hundreds of kilometers to reach the port under cover of darkness. Explosions rock tanker piers at night, and the blasts ignite fuel spills that disrupt loading operations for days. Russian guards spot incoming threats late, and they fail to intercept all units speeding toward docks. Inland strikes pound railway switches, and the hits crumple tracks used for military shipments heading to fronts. UAV operators launch from hidden bases, and they navigate through defenses to drop payloads on critical junctions. Fires rage at the sites, and the damage halts trains carrying ammo or parts essential for sustained campaigns. The overall aim stretches Russian defenses wide, and it breaks fuel plus rail supply chains that feed frontline efforts. Disruptions force Moscow to ration resources across sectors, and the shortages weaken coordinated assaults on key towns. Ukrainian planners coordinate these dual fronts, and the synergy pulls enemy focus away from core battles. The campaign buys time for regrouping and highlights how combined arms can offset numerical edges through smart targeting. The final fight for Pokrovsk now looks less like a single battle and more like a stress test for both armies, and the outcome could quietly shape the next phase of this war. Russian forces keep pouring in troops, armor, and drones because a breakthrough here would give Moscow a symbolic victory and new routes into the heart of Donetsk. Ukraine is holding the line with every tool available, from FPV swarms to long-range strikes that hit fuel depots, rail hubs, and command sites far behind the front. The clash between Pokrovsk and Mirnohrad shows that this is no longer a contest for streets or buildings. It is a war of logistics, drone dominance, and reaction time, where seconds and supply lines matter more than raw troop numbers. Both sides are taking heavy losses, and neither seems willing to slow down. Signals on the ground suggest that the fighting could escalate even further, as Russia sends new brigades toward the city, and Ukraine prepares more deep strike campaigns that could reach 300 kilometers if Western support arrives on schedule. This raises the real question for viewers. Will Pokrovsk become the turning point that changes the map of Donetsk, or will it end up as just another costly chapter in a long war of attrition? Share your thoughts below, because these debates often reveal how people around the world read the future of this conflict. Like, share, and subscribe to Military Force so you never miss the next battlefield update.